Welcome to the Mindset Architect podcast, where it's all about creating the life you want, the business you want, and making a real difference. Join us in unlocking the code to true success. And now your host, Tony Caliendo, Master Coach with Rethink Coaching.
Welcome to the Mindset Architect podcast, episode number 99. I'm Tony Caliendo, Master Coach here at Rethink Coaching. And as always, I just want to take a moment and thank you for investing your time with me. Time truly is our greatest asset, and the fact that you're willing to invest your time with me today truly does mean a great deal. So here we go, team. I want to talk to you today about a concept that I use in my coaching practice with my one-on-one clients, because it's really important at times for us to lean in and use different tools to help people get to their next level and help them experience growth. One of the things that I find fascinating with us as human beings is we spend more time in the negative. And we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to dive into that much. But what it usually means is we're far clearer on the negative than we are on the positive. We're far clearer on what we don't want versus what we do want. And that is probably our biggest opportunity. I know I was working with a particular client who I've worked with for many, many years, and I just appreciate them so much as a client. And we're working on an additional part of his life right now. And I asked a question about what he wanted in this area of his life. And like so many people, he wasn't able to answer it. It really was a struggle to come up with what he did want. And so I tasked him with sitting in some space, creating the space to have some thinking time, and to really just jot down everything that he didn't want in that area of his life. And I will tell you, that's when so many light bulb moments happen for us, because as we're geared more towards the negative, and it's really brain's way of protecting you, but we're kind of lean towards that anyway. It has always been my experience working with humans that when we're stuck on what we don't know what we do want, if we just go to what we don't, they can fire off a lot of things that they don't want, because that is top of mind for them. So today is really about figuring out what you do want, either in life or business or a relationship or whatever it is that you want, that you've been struggling with really getting clear on specifically what that is. And we're going to spend some time in the don't want area. And when we're done and you go through the 7 steps, you will have clarity on what you truly do want. And some of us know what we want, right? I believe that some of us that have done a lot of work know what we want. Yet for myself, when I put myself through this exercise, I realize there's still some things that I haven't identified and made clear, that I'm holding on to the don't want more than the do. And so it's really important for everybody, regardless of where you are on your journey of transformation, that you spend some time in this area. So the number one thing I recommend to do is to start with what is the loudest, the don't want that is just speaking to you at a volume level 10. You know, it could be something that frustrates you. It could be something that drains you of your energy or your happiness, or drains you of joy, or it's something that you might feel a little misaligned with. You know, those things are not a bad thing. They're really just data. But if we want to start with what's the loudest, then that's where I would start, with what I don't want. So I hear people say often, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to feel stuck. I don't want to be frustrated, right? And that is the thing that speaks to them the most. A lot of people have the don't want of don't want to be broke or don't want to be stuck. That's a pretty common don't want. And what I do know is that when someone says that, it's a starting point, right? Now I know what you don't want. I know you don't want to be broke. We can work with that, because the opposite of not being broke is abundance, wealth, financial security, whatever that definition is for you. But it is a starting point to listen to the loudest don't wants that you find yourself saying the most often, and the ones that feel like they are just screaming at you. We've got to pay attention to those. So here's a question to help you out with that. What's one thing that you're crystal clear on that you don't want anymore? And what does that reveal about what you're actually craving? For me, stuck happens sometimes. And it's still one of those things. I just don't want to be stuck anymore. I don't want to be stuck anymore. I'm working on a lot of different projects, and there are moments where I feel stuck, like I just can't break through. And I will find myself still saying that. And I've trained myself to pay attention to the words don't want. And when I hear myself say those, I know that I need to spend some time getting really clear on what that really means and what it really reveals about what I'm truly craving. For me to not to be stuck means that I'm moving forward with a project. I'm continuing down the path towards that goal, that I'm moving in the direction of the intention that I set and the goal that I set for myself. That's really what I'm craving. It's not the stuck part. And so just embracing that and learning that the loudest don't want it are the most important that we deal with first. The number 2 thing would be to flip it, reverse the statement. So once you identify a don't want, we can flip it to its opposite, or better yet, the intentional counterpart of what that means. So we're just going to flip it. So if, for instance, you said, hey, I just don't want constant chaos in my schedule. Maybe what you do want is spaciousness, boundaryless, or freedom. We're just looking at the intentional counterpart. I don't want chaos. Well, what I'm really craving is freedom. What I'm really craving is boundaries. Those are the things that I'm really craving. And so I would invite you to take your top 3 don't want, so the ones that are speaking the loudest to you, because I promise you there's more than one, the ones that are speaking the loudest to you, and flip them. So the question for you is, if you flipped your top 3 don't wants, what truths about your ideal life would come to focus? This is really, really important. Think about this question. What truths about your ideal life would come to focus? When we live in the space of don't want, we're really not living our ideal life. We're not allowing ourselves to be in focus. We're spending time in the negative. This, to me, is one of the most important things that you could do. Take a moment, identify your top 3 loudest don't wants, and then flip it and reverse the statement, because it is going to reveal to you what you would really like your life to look like and what you would like to come into focus. And it gets really, really clear. Number 3 is your brain's negativity bias is actually working for you. We're wired this way. We're wired to identify discomfort or notice discomfort faster than we are our desire. So instead of resisting that, use that. So why do you think that is? There's a saying, right? People move from pain to pleasure. People typically do not want to be in a situation of pain, and that isn't physical pain. That's maybe mental, that's maybe emotional pain. We don't want to stay there. We tend to move away from that into pleasure. And what happens is we notice the discomfort faster because our brain wants to take us out of that. And so let's use that for our advantage. Let's take advantage of the way that the brain works. The brain remembers pain for protection, but the pain you're experiencing is also clarity in disguise. So think about that. The pain that you have, this happens often when I'm working with clients, when we need to take action against something that they're not comfortable with or they haven't done before. We sometimes, as a coach, and this may sound really cruel, yet it's a good way to get people into action, will intentionally create pain. Because if I intentionally create pain, your brain is going to figure out a way to get you out of pain and into pleasure. So I'm actually using that negative bias to help you. And we can do that with ourselves. So where in your life, think about this question. Where in your life is discomfort trying to show you something that you're ready to change or claim? I think this is really powerful. We want to move away from pain as quickly as we can, but I'm going to invite you to lean into it for just a little bit longer than we normally would. Don't allow your brain to immediately take you out of it. Spend time figuring out what that discomfort is trying to show you. Really, really important, because once we identify that, we can address it and we can move towards pleasure, fixing the discomfort item versus just moving towards pleasure to get away from the discomfort. So use that negative bias that our brains do such a brilliant job of creating for us. Use it to your advantage. It's always going to be there. We've talked about this. 80% of our thoughts are negative. We live in a negative space more than a positive space. We live in a don't want more than we live in a want. So it's going to be there with you forever. Use it to your advantage. Why wouldn't you? Number 4, get really specific about what you don't want. It's a clue, right? It's not your final destination. So I hear people say sometimes, I just don't want to be frustrated anymore, or I don't want to be stressed anymore. Okay, are you stressed about actions? Are you stressed about somebody telling you no? Are you stressed about your relationship? What is it specifically that you are stressed about? What kind of stress is it? When does it happen? Why does it happen? Really dig into that, because that is going to help you tremendously in figuring out exactly what you're looking for, exactly what you do want. When you get clarity on what you don't want and get very specific, it helps us create the path forward for what you do want. So you're not looking for just generic relief from the stress. You're looking for something very specific, a specific experience, a specific result, a specific feeling. You're looking for something very intentional. And we need to get clear on that so that we are positioning you with the right do want, exactly what you do want when we have clarity on what you don't. So ask yourself the question, what specifically about what you don't want is bothering you? What does that say about your deeper needs? So if yours is like, I just don't want to be frustrated anymore. Okay, great. What specifically are you frustrated about? Tell me about the frustration. For me, when frustration shows up, I find that a bit of my frustration lies in other people, and that is a total projection. Yet sometimes I get frustrated, and I don't want to be frustrated with people not meeting expectations. So if you work with me or for me, if you're part of my internal team, not from a client perspective as much, but if you work for me in my organization and I'm feeling frustrated towards you, I know that that is a trigger for me, that I don't want that. But I have to dig a little bit deeper into it. And ultimately for me, what it means is I don't want somebody who can't think on their own and come up with potential solutions. That's really the frustration. So once I got clear on that, I realized my biggest opportunity of what I did want. I want people who are big thinkers. I want people who come to me with solutions, not just the problem. What I wasn't doing was giving them permission to do that. And so my discovering what I didn't want in frustration, and specifically about frustration, led me to be a greater leader by training and encouraging my staff to be self-sufficient thinkers, to come to me with potential solutions. I may have a different idea about what I would do, but 9 times out of 10, I let them run with it and let them solve it. And I am no longer frustrated, specifically in that area. So think about what it is that's bothering you and what does it say about your true needs, those deeper needs. And that's a really important question because it can help you, again, identify what you do want. Number 5, don't wants reveal boundaries and values. So often the things that we reject are, what you don't want are violations of your core values. This is really important. You've got to pay attention because those are boundaries pointing to you as to what really matters the most. So let's say, if you're on my team, this is something I don't do, which I'm grateful that I don't do any longer, used to do it. But if you don't want to be micromanaged, okay, that's a boundary. That's a value that you have. I don't want to be micromanaged. I want to, it's a boundary, right? What it's really about is I want autonomy and trust. I want to feel like I can do what I need to do without somebody leaning over my shoulder. That is a boundary, and that's a huge value for me whenever I'm involved in an organization, my own or another organization. A lot of times I do projects with major companies, and it's a huge value for me. And if I'm feeling micromanaged and I find myself saying, gosh, I just don't want to be micromanaged anymore, I know it's been a violation of one of my boundaries and my value. So simply ask yourself what values are being disrespected in the things that you say you no longer want. Micromanage is a big one, and it's pretty common. I don't think most of us enjoy that feeling. And it again is a core value or a violation of a boundary. That's a big one. Number 6, go from elimination to intention. All right. So you can't build a life based only on what you want to avoid. That's pretty unrealistic. But once you identify the don't wants, so once you spend some time just dumping out everything you don't want, you now get to move into this great space of creation. You get to create what you do want. This is what I love most about this exercise. Once you get to dump all of the don't wants out of your head and you've dealt with them with the previous 5 steps, now you get to move into the really cool phase of creation. So you can't build a life just based on what you want to avoid. Now you get to create what you want. It's one thing to stop going in the wrong direction. So think about this, but it's another to start designing the right one. This is what I love about don't want to do what. That's your direction. That's where you get to go. That's what you get to create. And it is such an amazing gift to give yourself to create the life, the business, the relationship, whatever it is, the joy, whatever it is that you're stuck on that you don't know what you do want. Once you get here, this is really where the magic can happen. And you get to live in this intention and you get to experience things at a higher level. I always say it's like somebody, when I get to this point, because I still deal with stuff, right? As a human being and as my business grows and projects grow, I still have to deal with this. I still have to get really right about what I do want. And what I love about this phase of moving into creation, it's like somebody cleans the lens and I get to see clearly now because I am really certain of exactly what I want and I get to move towards that. It is like, it's the coolest feeling. It's like all of a sudden the cloud lifts, the smoke clears. I get to see perfectly clear now and create what I'm moving into. So now that you know what you don't want, this is a great question to ask yourself from elimination to intention. Now that you know what you don't want, what would it feel like to give equal energy to what you do want? I love that. What would it feel like to give equal energy to what you do want? Remember, we spend more time in the negative. Don't want is a negative. We spend more time there. What if you gave what you did want the same amount of attention as we're giving the don't wants? I can tell you from my personal experience, it is the clarity moment. It is the moment where you get into flow. It's the moment where everything seems to just be magically working. And all of a sudden, the joy, the enjoyment, the happiness, the peace, all of those great feelings return because you are now certain on where you're headed. Number 7, just keep in mind, clarity comes from contrast. And that's what the don't want versus the do want has. So contrast isn't the enemy. It's actually your starting point or your launch point. Without contrast, desire wouldn't have context. So use the gap as your fuel. I always say this, just want you to think about it in these terms, right? I only know what it feels like to be happy because I felt sad. If I never experienced the emotion of sadness, I wouldn't know what happiness is. So you have to experience the contrast, right? Angry is, or content, right? I wouldn't know what it would mean to be content if I didn't know what anger felt like. Happy, sad. It's the contrast that is going to help you on the journey. It's the gap. So the gap between happy and sad, that gap is where you are and where you want to be. I want to move out of and into. It's the gap. And so spending time in that, it's really your map. And if you can let it guide you, remember, we're moving away from pain, which negative emotion is pain. We're moving away from pain towards pleasure. So we're moving throughout that gap to get to where we really want to be. And a great question to ask yourself is, where has contrast in your life been your greatest teacher? What clarity has it given you that you couldn't have found otherwise? I will share again, it's the happy and sad thing, right? I've had some really important people in my life are no longer with me. And that feeling is abundant sadness, right? But what it has done for me in the contrast is I have a different appreciation and joy and happiness for the people who are still with me. And it was in that gap that I discovered my path to that. It didn't happen overnight because I was in the sad arena for a long time. But it did allow me to realize that I can experience joy and happiness with people who are still with me if I allow it and get out of the negative space. So for me, that's where contrast in my life has been my greatest teacher, is embracing it, embracing the contrast, and knowing that it's not the enemy. It's actually what allows me to have the feel goods about what I do want. And the moment I embrace that, I'm not saying that I'm like joyous when somebody is no longer in my life, but I embrace it and I bless the contrast because I understand now that I can be on both sides of the slide of this scale, but I can intentionally choose to be in the better part of it, move away from the pain. So if you're struggling with something, and I will tell you, this exercise with my client was a game changer. This one question I asked him, or this one exercise I asked him to do, turned the light bulb on to what he did want. He rediscovered this part of his life that he hadn't paid attention to in a very long time. And what I know is that that is not a unique case. We all struggle at times knowing what we want. And sometimes, we don't know what we want for our future. We know what we should say. We know the canned response on what we should say, but sometimes when we really boil it down, we don't know what we want for our future. So sometimes we have to give ourselves permission to go to the contrast of what we don't want. And I promise you, if you do this, the don't wants will flow like water. You might be shocked at how many don't wants you have. These 7 steps can help clear the path between the gap of what you don't want and what you do want in a way that you get to live the majority of your life in time in the space of what you do want. And that is one of the biggest gifts that I could ever give to you as a coach, is to teach you how to do this. So as always, team, if you have any questions about this or anything else, please don't sit and be stuck. Reach out to me. You can email me, tony@rethinkcoaching.com. Easiest way to get a hold of me. You can go to our website, register for a free strategy call that comes directly to me. You can find me, direct message me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of the social outlets I am on. I'm pretty easy to find. So if you're really struggling with getting clear on what you do want, and you are in a place that this is helping a little, but you really need somebody to help you unlock it at a greater level, please reach out. I'm happy to help you out. It's a 1-hour complimentary strategy session, and the don't want exercise we can do pretty quickly. It is typically something that I can do in less than an hour with my clients, and it changes the energy. It changes the way that they get to show up. When you have clarity on what you do want, life looks a lot brighter and clearer. All right, team, go make it an amazing week. Figure out what you do want. Talk to you soon. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you must come check out the Mindset Architect Group Coaching Program. It's our monthly program where we explore the power of your mindset, help you identify what you truly want in business and life, and then help you reach those goals. Come check us out at rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. That's rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. We'll see you there.